In this lecture, we will try to have a grasp over certain basic and some advanced concepts related to feminism, the importance of which can hardly be overstated. First of all, we would like to talk about patriarchy. A one liner from me would be feminism is not against men but against patriarchy. Literally, the word patriarchy means the rule of the father. This is a name given to a very complex system of male dominance by which most of the societies that we see or know are ruled. In most of the societies that we know, see, or get to hear about, the center is male, the male gender. For example, after marriage, usually women go to the house of man, not otherwise, not the other way around. And women change their surnames to their husband's surnames. Though these days there are changes, but these are recent trends. Generally, this is the pattern. Or widowhood, virginity, etc., are concepts which are often related to women, more often related to women than men. Further, this patriarchy also includes marginalization or exclusion of the female gender from different rights like those of inheriting property, the right to vote, even right to equal play and equality before law, and even right of education. In the Indian context, for example, there is a conception or concept that if women study, then they will be widows. That is why they were not sent to pathshalas, etc., at least from the beginning of the Middle Ages. Though we say that in the ancient Indian civilization, they enjoyed equal education, etc. Similarly, even abroad, in the very advanced European countries, the female right to vote or the right of the women to vote came very late. In fact, in the 1920s or even after that, even right of women to education also were not granted earlier, except some treatment in the house. So by and large, this is what the feminists oppose: patriarchy, rule of men, our society centered on men, and asks for the feminists ask for equality in all kinds. Now, from this basic concept, we will move on to a slightly complicated concept called gaze. G-A-Z-E. Gaze, which basically means, say, looking at. This is primarily from psychoanalysis developed by Lacan, who followed Sartre's analysis of the look, but it has been more adopted by feminist theories, especially feminist film studies, in which what they emphasize is how one looks at the other, how people are controlled by others' looks or thoughts of others' looks, etc., etc. While in general everyone is controlled by looks or gaze, at a deeper level, it is mostly the women, and now we can add the third gender, who are constantly under surveillance of male gaze or patriarchal gaze. Say women cannot go out of the houses at night, or women should not wear short dresses, men can though. So they are under constant surveillance or more constant surveillance than men. So this is basically gaze theory, that is how looks control and contain especially women, and how their subjectivity is compromised or dominated. Related to this again is the theory of scopophilia, which is very important in film studies also. Scopophilia basically means love of watching. Scope means watching, seeing, and philia of course means love. So this is basically we can say the sexual pleasure which one gets from looking at bodies or even other things, objects, if there is a case of fetish. This originates again in Freud, just as the theory of gaze had prominently originated with Lacan. The scopophilia originated in Freud, but then the feminists have criticized Freud's uh, overarching insistence or importance on the male child, and also he is maintaining that the female, the looking and seeing, you know, of the male sexual organs by the female children generates in them a kind of penis envy, because they lack the phallus, which Freud called penis envy, and this continues throughout their lives. Whereas the other stages of psychosexual development, especially in case of men, because please remember Freud's prioritized subject is the male child. However, in normal male children, all the stages of psychosexual developments stages, and finally they become a quote unquote uh, normal subject, unless there is any kind of deviation or psychological problem. However, in case of the female child, the so called penis envy remains throughout their lifetime, which is what Freud maintains. And these feminists have, you know, feminists have actually protested, and they have found problems with. Now, related to this is also the feminist film theory, in which there is a sufficient contribution of Laura Mulvey, and they theorize, people who are influenced by Laura Mulvey and Lacan, they theorize gaze, the gaze, gaze of the camera, and even gaze of the audience in terms of this scopophilia, that is getting pleasure from looking at, and then also the previous theory of the gaze. There was an important, I mean, interesting thriller movie, I think of the 60s, which I watched, called Peeping Tom. If you can possibly, if you watch that, it will be interesting and you can understand what I am talking about. Also, cross check this with the Foucauldian interrogation of the panopticon, concept of the panopticon, and I mean gaze and scopophilia. Then till now we have covered actually patriarchy, gaze, scopophilia, and by the way, the feminist criticism of Freud's postulations on penis envy. There is again yet another important concept that I want to discuss, that is écriture féminine. Literally, it means feminine writing, écriture féminine, or say feminine or female writing. This has been gifted to us by Alan Sizu, who, by using this term, describes a mode of writing that resists the predominantly patriarchal or male models, or in fact what she prefers to call phallic models of communication. It is not necessary that écriture féminine refers to writings by females only, but even if it is written by male or man, especially it has to be by those men who occupy so-called quote-unquote feminine space, the space which we generally associate to women. So they can include not only writing by females, but by men who do not fit into the heteropatriarchal system, or whom we are increasingly calling these days non-binary men, or maybe LGBTQ, though this was not the term used by Sizu as such. And these are some of the important concepts related to a deeper understanding of feminism from the surface level or general understanding of feminism as contesting rule of man or rule by men, with which of course we started in this short talk, patriarchy. But in gaze and in scopophilia or penis, and we saw how even very subtle things like looking, which we take to be an innocent act, but then looking has a great, complicated political aspect. Looks control us. All looks control other looks, but especially male looks control female looks. I mean females, and possibly both male and female looks combined control the third gender movements or LGBTQ movement. That is why they are the third gender. So gays and scopophilia are important. They're important in theory of films also, study of films also. And then of course acriture feminine, which is basically writing by female, and if not female, by some kind of man who generally, as I say, do not fit into the binary structures, and they are more or less LGBTQ. Now we would like to go back to uh, some kind of a little kind of traditional feminism, that is called material feminism. Now, what is material feminism? Material feminism is a kind of feminism which is based on Marxist principles, particularly. The term was coined by Christine Delphi, who offered a feminist critique of patriarchy by following Marx. She focuses her analysis on the family as an economic unit. Just as we say, for example, that the colonized have been exploited by the colonizers in post colonialism, or lower classes are exploited and oppressed by the upper classes in society, Delphi explains how women are subordinated within families. Actually, women in themselves constitute a class of their own based on their operation as women, regardless of whatever socio-economic class they belong to. And very interestingly, Delphi has said that marriage is a labor contract, basically, which seals the fate of women, because after marriage it is understood that women will do the household works, but that will be unpaid work. Also they will give birth to children, but then there will be no price for that except quote unquote maintenance. So basically marriage is an instrument for exploitation of women, particularly. That is what Christine Delphi maintained. So as long as the institution of marriage remains, there cannot be any escape from for women especially. And possibly I would like to add men too, because men too are victims of patriarchy. Men studies are coming in a big way these days, but anyway, on that I will elaborate maybe in a separate lecture. But in brief, materialist feminism coined by Christine Delphi refers to basically a Marxist critique of patriarchal society, and they emphasize on the economic aspect of that exploitation, basically how women are made non-entities through marriage, because this is a kind of a labor contract only, after which it is understood that all women can do is some household work and giving childbirth, I mean bearing children, for which there won't be any payment. So and it is not that this kind of reading is over. This still continues. By and large, the dominant trend of United Nations organization and other such big bodies is basically emphasis on the economic equality of women or economic exploitation of women. And it has been estimated that the largest amount of work done in the world, all works taken together, are done actually by women, especially women who stay back at their homes to support and maintain their families. But there is no payment, and that is why they are not respected. Though once in a while you will find and come across very emotional Facebook posts and WhatsApp posts that mother is the main person in the family. She cannot sleep when her children are awake, or gives away the best food possible to her children and maybe husband, and she suffers. But in such posts, this is my addition, of course, this is not said by Delphi. In such posts, what is finally happening is that you are not arguing for equality of mothers or future mothers so much as you are idealizing mother's sacrifice. It's very much like the controversy about Mother Teresa. Recently, Taslima has come out in a big way. She did it earlier also, you know, finding loopholes with what Teresa did. So, anyway, so my point is this kind of posts that we come across, at least in India, often in social media and other things, notwithstanding the fact that they to some extent highlight our women folks predicament, but as I said, it is done for the purpose of romanticizing or turning women into a goddess and showing how such sacrifices make her great and we are not great. So there is a politics involved there. And then further also remember, this is idealization of or idolatry of one aspect of women only, that is motherhood. This is very typical symptom of patriarchy, because patriarchy finally represents respects women who become mother only, or those who are virgin, in between no space for others. So these are some of the interesting concepts possibly I discussed today. You found it Possibly you found it helpful. So patriarchy, gaze, scopophilia, accretor feminine, and materialist feminism. Thank you very much. I'll be back very soon again.